feared and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hey, welcome in everybody to the next edition of Chasing the Pennant podcast. As I'm Joe Boric, joined by Andrew Santangelo this evening, as we're here to talk about the brilliant, great news that finally came down the pipe. JT Realmuto re-signing with the Phillies. So how you doing today, Andrew?
I couldn't be any better now. We finally got our boy JT Realmuto. He's finally back. We've only been calling for, I don't even know, for what, like a year now at this point. We wanted to get this deal done. It only took a whole new front office to come into town, but no, I'm doing really well now. Been a little busy, but enjoying it now with this JT news.
Yeah, it's definitely great to see our star catcher come back. That calls a great game, throws a lot of people out. The deal was 5 years, 115.5, which, as Greg Mish reported, translates to 23.1 in an AAV, which did break the record as he wanted to do for catchers. So starting with that, what do you think of the deal as a whole in terms of value for a catcher and length?
I think I'm 100% fine with it. I think, in a way, obviously 23.1 and him being the highest paid catcher in the league is a lot of money. And, it might tie up a little bit. But it's a situation where I think it had to get done. We know where the Phillies are at. We know how stubborn they're trying to be. But in the end, you bring in a new front office. They fly out to him. They're willing to do what it takes. And I think he lost a little bit of trust in the previous group here, and that's kind of what caused some of the issues. And then he sees them get rid of those guys and bring in a whole new group. And I think that kind of regained some of that trust. And I think they were pretty close with the 5-year 110 initially reported. I think that would have tied the AAV record. But I think ultimately, whether it was the Braves report that got him the extra million or if it just they ended up negotiating it and him becoming the highest paid, it happened. And I'm 100% fine with it because I think, obviously, you're in a situation where I know it got denied this recently for the DH this year, but you're in a situation most likely in the upcoming years it's going to get passed because it's the way it seems to go. So I don't think he's going to – and I think he could last 5 years of catcher. I mean, we see Yadier Molina. I think he could keep up that pace with him. But you're going to have the DH, I think, coming to the NL eventually. And I think also, obviously, we've seen him play first base a lot in some games in the past. So I think a lot of it has to do with that, where you'd be willing to move him to first base for a few games and either give Reese the day off or, let's be real, you know how big of a Hoskins fan I am, but he obviously has had his up and downs as well. So we'll see if maybe that plays a part into it as well. But I have no issues with it. This team is in a bigger market in Philadelphia area, obviously. And I think this was a deal that had to get done, and finally they came to terms and were willing to spend money. And, hey, listen, a lot of people thought he was going to get a lot more money, so I think that plays a big part in it as well.
Yeah, I know originally some talks were like the 150, like the Springer-esque or something along those lines. And that for a catcher, I think, would have been a little bit pushing. But 115 is definitely fine for me. He deserves to be the highest paid catcher. I think Grandal's still the second, who deserves to be the second also, if that is the case. And I agree that it's a pretty good contract for JT. And I think he's someone you definitely want to build your foundation pieces around. He also obviously has seemed to, I don't know if it's because of JT or not, but he's definitely seemed to, just from the outside looking in, helped Andrew Knapp. Because all of a sudden, now that when JT was here for the next year, last year, Knapp started doing better. And I'm sure that had to do some with getting together with one of the best catchers in baseball to practice your game and to tune your game and fine-tune your game. I'm sure that had something to do with that.
Yeah, that question, but you're ready for this real quick. The highest paid catcher going into 2021 is not Grandal. He's third. But before that signing, I don't know if you want another guess or not. But
it couldn't have been Buster still, because didn't Grandal beat Buster? It was Buster?
It's Buster Posey. 2021, Buster Posey's getting 22,
that's right.
22.1 million. Grandal's getting 18.
It's because Buster Posey re-signed, so that didn't count. Grandal beat the free agency AAV
Yeah.
before JT, and then Posey re-signed. Yeah, that's what it was. That's okay. There we go. Now we figured it out. Yeah.
But no, yeah, I think to your point, Andrew Knapp is. I think the way he had last year, and I think that's what they're going to hope for is. And obviously his offense has been up and down. Obviously a good year last year, but he's been a favorite of some pitchers in terms of the defensive side and calling games as well. So I think that did play a factor and allows you to get Jay and allow him the split time like that. So I think you're absolutely right in that sense. Even though I'm not the biggest Nat fan.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when we got Bradley too, one of the main reasons he said he wanted to come here was to throw to JT.
I would say you're right by his Twitter. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
So obviously, if you didn't sign JT, that would have been a very quick way to piss off a guy that you did just sign.
Right.
So that's also a good sign there. I think you need a catcher of JT's caliber too. If you're getting guys like Bradley who have good breaking stuff, you're getting Alvarado who, when he's on his game, has some of the best two seamers and breaking stuff in the game when he's actually on his game. So you're going to need guys. Obviously a Hector Splitter. You're going to need guys that are able to catch that. You can't have a Wilson Ramos or Gary well, maybe a developing with Sanchez, but still really not a Sanchez as catcher back there if you're going to have guys that are throwing it in the dirt and guys that are playing with their breaking balls the way they're supposed to. You need a guy like JT. And so far, our backup catcher, Knapp, has been mostly defensive in his career and has been good at that. Last year's the first year he started hitting. So I think it's good to have two catchers that are able to block it with the best of them when you're getting these pitchers that are supposed to have pretty good breaking stuff and really come right at you in that way. You need to be able to catch those pitches. You can't just have them going to the backstop every 5 seconds like Wilson Ramos did. So.
No, yeah, without question, I think it's a big. Again, it saves games. It saves runners on moving in the scoring position, and even like you said, breaking balls, which a lot of times you're using on a third strike and preventing maybe a drop third strike getting on. So it's a huge part of the game, and glad to see the Phillies finally get it done and willing to keep going and get a guy like JT back in here because it definitely helps him. And you mentioned Archie Bradley, well, a guy you signed last year, and Zach Wheeler, that was a big reason he came here as well. So, and obviously we all know Bryce Harper's. When he was trying to get JT back. So you just pleased a lot of your team already and built probably some more morale rather than letting a lot of it go. So in terms of outside just the playing field as well, for JT's sake, it's a big signing overall team-wise too for that locker room as well.
Yeah. Now we might have to go from making everybody happy, holly jolly, and glad to saying, where do we think this move puts us? If the Phillies were to just stay pat right now, after also bringing in Ivan Nova, by the way, for people that didn't see that. Terrible season last year, but for 3 seasons before that was a quality 5th starter type level guy, 4.38 ERA. So if he can pitch to that, he can be the innings eater you need. If he pitches to last year, he's basically just an extra guy that'll be gone by week 2. But we'll have to see what he's able to do. But with JT now, if we were to stop at these moves right now, where do you think we are in the division compared to the Nationals, Braves, and Mets?
Well, I hate to say it, but after what the offseason the Mets have done, I mean, they're definitely ahead of us, I think, pending anything else that happens. I have to say the Braves, you're returning NL East champion. I'd say they're back as well in front of the Phillies because they have had a solid offseason as well. And I don't think the Nationals are going to be nearly as bad as last year. They'll have Juan Soto for a full year. I expect some of those pitchers to come back. They obviously just signed Brad Hand.
That's very helpful.
And we came in the bottom last year, so I think it puts us in a tough spot. But I think that this is a big move overall, obviously. And my thing is, I think I understand what the Marlins did last year, but I think we're better than the Marlins on paper. I think. I still think I'd put us over the Marlins just because, again, I understand what they did last year, but top to bottom team-wise, I think they just excelled with a good, more than good manager, great manager, Don Mattingly. I think he helped escalate some of that, and obviously it was a weird season last season. And, again, with the Phillies, where the Phillies came in, I think we finished just above the Nationals. And then we're in front of the Braves, or Mets, I mean. Or the Mets passes at the end.
I think in the end we might have actually finished because they completely fell off a cliff, but I can't remember.
That's true. I think we were in fourth for the longest time, and then we might have
Moved up
passed
to
them at the
third
end.
because the Mets just fell off the
So
Mets cliff.
yeah, we were 28 and 32. They were 26 and 34. So we beat them by 2 games. So excuse me, Phillies were in third then last, but I still think the Mets are now above us on paper.
So that would
With,
put us
with
at
the moves they made. So right now I think we're at third. So probably the same as last year, if not fourth, depending on what Nationals team shows up and what else happens this offseason. Because I will say this, I don't think the Phillies are done yet. And we can get into that maybe in a little
better
bit.
not be.
We can get into that a little bit on who I think might return or just come here. But right now on paper, I'd say the Phillies are probably third, maybe fourth, depending on what Nationals teams show up.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
the Marlins finishing last.
I completely agree with that. That's also why I just said they better not be. Because you don't sign JT. I don't know who tweeted it today, but somebody said you don't make this move if you're not planning on spending more money. If you just sign JT and then go, great, we have JT back, everybody's happy with life. They're going to be happy for about a month and a half until you start sucking again because you don't have enough pitching depth, or for that matter, bench depth, and then you don't do anything.
Well,
So
on top of that, this puts you in a spot now, and I think a lot of people got to remember this too. You now have JT, who's 30. You now have Aaron Nola, who's what? He's 28. You have Reese Hoskins, who's about 28. I think Harper's 28. You have who else would you say is the core is of this team? Reese Hoskins. I guess that's pretty much it. No, Zach Wheeler. He's what, 29, 30. He's around
yeah,
30 as well.
he's like
So
30, I think. Yeah.
my point here is all your prime guys all your top core guys right now are entering their prime. You can't waste that now. Like you can't continue to waste that away. Like now's the time where you got to spend a little bit extra bucks because you can't sit here for another 2 years with the same group that clearly didn't work. I mean, obviously we love JT and we love to welcome back, but basically if you go into next year outside of and that's why I think the relief pitching has been really good so far with, as you mentioned, Alvarado, now Archie Bradley. I think that's been a tremendous upgrade. But basically, yeah, you can't go in next year with the same team, which they have made great moves, but you can't be done yet, or else you're going to keep wasting these teams away. And that's why, again, I'm not saying I don't think we're going out and getting Trevor Bauer. Don't think I'm saying that.
So.
But I think there's still a couple other moves to be made here shortly.
Yeah, one of those moves that we unfortunately missed out on was Andrelton Simmons for 10.5 going to the Minnesota Twins. Now that seems like everybody's saying we're back on the Didi Gregorius train. So how do you feel about the fact that Didi might come back, and also Didi per reports wants a multi-year deal where the others of Simeon and Simmons got a 1-year deal. So how do you feel about that in comparison to?
Listen, we already talked about. We thought JT was gonna get around 150, and we got him for 115. So obviously, we saved a lot of money from the expected destination there. We saved 35 million in that sense. If you're comparing those two dollars, but here's the opposite hand. I think Gregorius has a lot bigger hand on the Phillies right now than JT did at that point, especially with the way today went down. You now just lost, as you mentioned, Simeon, and I don't think they were too high on him, but Freddie Galvis is off the market too now. So I think you lost three shortstops in one day. So that puts Gregorius obviously the best shortstop left on the market, if not the only one. I can't even name you another shortstop off the top of my head that's a free agent.
Yeah, I don't know who's another top guy that's
so,
agent. Yeah.
So basically, you're either looking at Gene Segura at shortstop next year or Didi Gregorius. Or I guess you could move Kingery there and have Segura at second again. By the way, my point is like Gregorius is the front runner now for this team. Like you gotta find a way to get a deal done with him, I think. And I understand Bryson Stott's coming up soon, and I don't think it'd be the start of this season. I'd be highly surprised. Yeah. Maybe a chance at the end. But overall, I think you might see Stott in 2 years, which would hold your hand in trouble if Gregorius obviously wants a 2-year deal. But I think if he's a 2-year deal, maybe you take that risk. Maybe you try to move him in the offseason next year or whatnot. Because I think at this point you got to bring Gregorius back. Because I was always okay if you lose Gregorius, you can bring in Simmons, especially with and I think this is why I lost out on him because of his defense. When you mentioned it. I mean, Archie Bradley's more of a ground ball pitcher with his breaking ball. Alvarado can get ground balls. We all know Zach Eflin and Zach Wheeler ground ball. And even Aaron Nola, if he's not striking guys out, I feel like the majority of his outs are ground balls. So really, your
same
pitching,
with Eflin.
Yeah, so really your pitching staff is based off a ground ball type of team. And listen, we all know Gene Segura struggles on the defensive end. So, and then you're obviously moving Kingry's spot. So, if you couldn't get Simmons or Galvis, I guess defensively, I mean Gregorius wasn't bad. I think he's the guy to get now. And here's the deal. I think all the other shortstops had a 1-year deal. So maybe you find a way to pay him extra $2 million to sign another 1-year deal. I don't obviously am not in the negotiation room, but both sides hopefully can get done eventually. I mean, we're I think 3 weeks away, if that, from spring training starting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you throw 20 million at him for 1 year, then yeah, you might look at that and go, okay, this works for me. But you would have to see if you're willing to do that for the 1-year contract. I would re-sign him. I think they have to re-sign him because you're missing a huge hole in your lineup. Number two, actually, because number one is the fact that he's really good at defense, and then number two, you're missing a big hole in your lineup because Didi really did well last year and was able to kind of slide through your lineup. If you need him to bat fourth, he even batted fourth at times. If you need him to bat third, second, probably shouldn't bat first, but he could bat first if you want him to, fifth. So there's different things that he can do. But looking on the market, there literally is no other shortstop. There's one paid shortstops on Sports Track. That's how little shortstops there is. There's not even another page. So it's literally Didi, and then Yuri, Adriana, and a Denny Hedgevaria are the only two somewhat decent. And they're not that good. They're both just fielders, and that's it pretty much.
Yeah, I'm gonna be that con. They really don't have any other shortstops. They had Marcus Semien, Didi Gregorius, Simmons, Freddie Galvis, and then Kim, who are all signed now outside of Gregorius. That's the only 5 they had on their list.
Yeah, and Kim, I think, was more of a second baseman coming over from Korea than he was a short. They might just end up using him when what's his name, Tatis is resting. If they had Lindor, that would be ridiculous.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know why they have him listed there.
Yeah, because I would think he would still play second, and Cronenworth would probably play the outfield. But anyway, this is not a Padres podcast. We'll get into who we think also separate from Didi. One guy for me that I've been saying for a while that I want to go after because other than last year, he's had pretty good years is Odorizzi. I just feel like if you're going by the mantra of getting guys that keep the ball on the ground when they're at their best, guys that play to their defense when they're at their best, that's Jake Odorizzi. And I think if you're going to re-sign if you're going to re-sign Diddy and solidify your defense anyway, you should probably sign an outfielder too. And then you would have a more solidified defense. I think signing a guy like Odorizzi can go a long mile because he's already going to be at most your third starter. And since they really like Eflin, they might put him in as their fourth starter and have Eflin be their third starter. So I think bringing him in, he's going to have no pressure coming in because you have Wheeler and Nola. So I think this could be a good setting for him to get that 1-year prove it again deal since he had an off year last year and then really come in here and show something for Caleb Cotham. I think I said his name right, our new pitching coach. So I think all the quotes I heard from him I like. He actually plays like Price did, to seeming like going with what that individual needs to make himself the best rather than like Chris Young, where let's have everybody pitch up and in. It's like, no, that's stupid. So I think we have a pitching coach that's young and hungry, and I think that might work out for the best, especially with a manager like Joe Girardi. You might remind him of his younger self, because we know Joe, when he first became a manager, was very hungry with that Marlins team, and then of course went to the Yankees and always took them to the promised land until the end. So that's a move for me. I think would be a good move. He's probably, other than Bauer, potentially the best or second best pitcher, third best pitcher, still on the market. So I would say I would go after him, and I think he's going to have more of a 2019 season than a 2020 season. So I think that would be a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that at all. I like Odorizzi. I think, like you said, for all the right reasons. I mean, again, I think the Phillies still need a starting pitcher. Whether it's going to be him, maybe you try to bring back Cole on a 1-year deal. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Is that my first choice? Probably not, but I think it's a deal that obviously has to still be out there. There's obviously other veterans available. You talk about trying to restructure your career. Rick Porcello, I mean, he's 32. Obviously had it down last couple of years. I know you're really familiar with him. So maybe he's a guy you take a chance. So I've always not minded James Paxton. You can bring him as a lefty rotation.
Yeah, I like Paxton. I just worry about health. If I had no concerns
so
about
fit right in.
Yeah, if I had no concerns about his durability, I would sign James Paxton any day of the week because he's the guy that could be your third ace. I don't think Odorizzi is a third ace. When Paxton's at his best, he's ace caliber. When Odorizzi's at his best, he's about second, third starter caliber. So if I had no questions about the fact that I think Paxton's always been an injury concern, that would be my first pick. But because of availability is the best asset, I would go with Odorizzi for me if I was ranking them if I was a GM, I would have him ranked as my priority a little bit higher by like a minuscule notch than Paxton just for that reason.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think one big name I would like to see the Phillies add to this team by the end of the offseason is a guy that honestly we've been rumored with for a while. And I really think that and you can sign JT obviously, and then if you bring back Gregorius, I think this is a very realistic option still, and that's Jackie Bradley Jr. I really think, again, I've always liked him with Boston. I think with him being a free agent now, I think he's basically not going back to the Red Sox. It surprised me at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
You've been rumored to get him multiple times, I feel like, the last 3 trade deadlines, and this is an opportunity to bring him finally here. And I would not be opposed to it. I think center field's still a question mark, and this is a guy that's been starting in the league for a little while now. And I think an outfield of McCutchen, Bradley, and Harper sounds really good to me with the offense and the infield as well. Hey, there's no way pitchers don't like him either because he's a fantastic defender. So I think that would be one of my go-to gets here. And I forget who it's been on Twitter. The last name I'll give, and I've seen some trade rumors for this guy, so he's not a free agent. But Lance McCullers from Houston. I don't know if you like him, but I know we've been rumored to kind of go after him maybe.
Yeah, he obviously stepped up for them outside nonsense aside. In the playoffs that they were able to get to the promised land and win. So I think he's a guy that is probably because of his injury track, kind of like Wheeler, where he broke out, got injured, and now you're waiting for that next breakout. And I think you're probably going to see that this year. So, yeah, this is probably the year you would want to get him because you're not going to be able to get him, I don't think, after this year because whoever gets him is probably going to lock him up for a pretty decent contract for about 3-4 years after this year with the year that I think he has the capability of having. He's another guy that has a very good breaking ball, too. One of the best breaking balls. So if you got someone like him, that's another reason why keeping a guy like JT is huge too. His curveball is one of the best in the league. So
yeah, you know what's funny about him? His only All-Star year was his worst season probably. His rookie year, he had a 3.22 ERA. 16, he had a 3.22 ERA. In 2017, he had a 4.25 ERA. And then in 2018, he had a 3.86. In 2020, he had a 3.93. His only All-Star game is when he had a 4.25 ERA.
I gotta love how much sense that makes.
So he must have had a really good first half and then just imploded the second half.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't really know what to really say to that one. For me, I would say the only other guy, if we couldn't get Jackie Bradley, my second guy is probably Pilar. If you can't get Bradley, he's not as good as Bradley. Bradley has more pop and RBI potential than Kevin Pilar. Kevin Pilar is more of the fielder and contact guy, and that seems to be Mr. Clutch, at least when he was with San Francisco, and still was at times with Boston. But I think if you get Kevin Pilar, that could be another decent guy to hold you over for a year or two, because I don't see Jackie Bradley or Kevin Pilar getting more than a 2-year contract. So I would say that would probably be what can hold you over there. Last year he did hit 288, which was his best in a while in a shortened season. His career average is 262, though, and I think that's more realistic to where he's at. I don't see him hitting 288 if you sign him, but that's not bad. If you're able to hit 262, field well in the outfield for us, I think that will help, because I think if you bring in either of those two, you're also helping a guy that you want to pan out in your former draft pick in Adam Hazley, because he judges balls a little bit off sometimes. Some balls he judges really well, other ones he misjudges. So if you have guys like Bradley or Pilar kind of mentoring a guy like him, that also by a domino effect probably benefits his career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes wonders for a player to have a guy help you like that. Because listen, there's some disconnect between Hazley and the front office of this Phillies team. Because obviously something's not on the same page. We've seen it in the past, and that's why I think center fielder is still on the table. And like you mentioned, where's
Unless if
JT's?
Dombrowski just loves Hazley and sees him as an Andrew Benintendi type. That's the only way that I don't see us signing.
Hey, we've been rumored to get him too. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but no, yeah, that's why I think JT leaves us right now is options to bring back DD and then get a small starter and a center fielder like that, and maybe bring in one reliever as well. Still here to come, but I think again, I think the Phillies aren't done just yet because again, I mean, you look at the lineup right now. Now you have JT, Reese, Scott Kingery, Gene Segura, Alec Bohm, Harper, Quinn slash Hazley, and then McCutcheon, and then. So I think there's obviously, I think you'd agree.
And you probably don't want Kutch playing as many games in left field at this point of his career either. And without the DH, that kind of hurts you with McCutcheon a little bit.
Yeah, so you want to give him days off, and you'll have the ability with that. And listen, I think the thing that still fears me, I think our depth isn't strong either. Like
No.
right now, we already met. You get Quinn or Hazley, depending on who starts. Phil Gosselin's a free agent, I believe, so
Yeah, I don't think we re-sign Goose.
he's off the team right now. So you really, I mean, who off the bench? Because Jay Bruce is a free agent too. So who off this bench do you really trust to come in and get jobs done right now and give guys off out? Like, I mean, yeah, you got Andrew Knapp still. So right now you're looking at Andrew Knapp and depending on who starts, Quinn slash Hazley. And after that, you're still looking at. I mean, we'll see what happens in spring training, but you're still looking at a lot of question marks depending on how spring training sounds off and what happens in the end there in that sense. It's kind of funny to think that way too, because last year, I mean, for the most part, outside a couple guys, you had guys to come in, really get the
Let
job
me
done.
see.
So
We have C.J. Chetham, who Davey picked up from Boston as a guy that he liked when he picked him in Boston.
we have him. We have to see him make the team first.
No, we do. You're right. But it's Dave Dombrowski. I think there's a 95% chance he's going to make the team since Dombrowski traded for one of his people he liked in Boston. Unless if he absolutely flat out blows, I think there's a pretty good chance he's going to make the team. And in the minors, he is that like slap contact guy. In the majors, he's only profiled more as a I can glove it a little bit guy. Where if he's able to hit a little bit more up here, that could be your decent platoon bench guy, especially if Scott Kingery continues to struggle a little bit when it comes to the hitting end of it. So that's also another thing there. That's why I think you should add Didi back too, because we don't know if we're going to get what we hope Scott Kingery becomes, or if we're still going to get a very inconsistent hitting version of Kingery.
yeah, no, absolutely, and that's questions we're going to hopefully have answered here in the next few weeks or so. Like I said, I mean, spring training is right around the corner finally. I know I'm excited. As
One
much
of our
as the
top pinch hitters right now is Mickey Monia.
Yeah, right. It's kind of sad how thin our bench is right now. Like, you think you would usually have at least somebody else returning from last year, and we really don't unless you bring back Gregorius to move Kingery or Segura to the bench in one of those games. Because right now you mentioned CJ already. Outside of that, the only guy we have not mentioned, and this is another guy you don't know if he's making the team. The only other guy is Kyle Holder, and he's just another shortstop listed on the roster right now. Outside of that, like, there really is nobody else. That's why again. Phillies are still far from done, I think, and we'll see some. Again, I'm not saying Trevor Bauer signings, but last thing I have is we'll get something done.
Yeah, I do think we'll get something done, and I think the Phillies need to probably make, like we said, one more pitcher signing, whoever solid quality starter, other than just a Von Nova who's an innings eater or maybe done at this point. You have to wait and see. And then I think you probably should get, because yes, you helped out your bullpen, but if you go by how our bullpen was last year, getting two definites doesn't necessarily solidify your bullpen. Because when Alvarado from last year might not even be considered a definite, because he has good stuff, but he wasn't with it. So he needs to be able to get his control back again and have that good stuff. Where I think you still probably need to add one more there at least. Obviously, add to the outfield, add to the pitching staff, and then sign Didi. Then we might be talking about being in a better spot in the division rather than third or fourth, and still probably not making the playoff, even after signing JT Realmuto. So I think that's probably for me my closing point. What has to lie ahead? I don't really care what reliever that is. Trade for somebody that's good, sign somebody that's good. I could care less. As long as you get me another person that's good and doesn't get injured every 5 seconds, that's a key piece too. Then we would be good. Now, Ricky, if you want to use him as a platoon longman and starter, sure. If you think he's going to be your perfect number 3, then I don't know what you smoked. So, like, Dave Dombrowski must really be enjoying hopping over to Jersey then if he thinks Rick Porcello is a number 3, if you get my drift. So that's more what I'm saying there. But if you sign him, fine, but he's a 5. That's what Rick.
Yeah. You have to be. He's honestly not much of an upgrade over Vince Velasquez at this point in his career.
No, yeah. Other than the fact that he actually throws the ball in the damn strike zone. The problem is he throws it right in the strike zone. So you can.
Yeah, so you want to give up 10 hits for 5 runs, or you want to give up 10 walks for 5 runs?
Yeah, it's kind of like which one do you want? Yeah, what poison do you want? But I think obviously we had good news today with the Phillies. I hope, but I also think we'll have some good news with Didi coming down, because I think the Phillies realize how big of a priority that is now that they missed out on Galvis, Simmons, and Semien, like we said in the pod. So I believe that will be something that will happen for the Phillies. But I think this year, as a closing point, to Kingery and those guys, you need to see more from. You need to see more consistency from Reese. And Kingery, I'll give an excuse to because he had terrible COVID before the year. But this year, you have to see him come back and actually show the signs he showed before and not still have the signs of last season.
Yeah, no, without question.
But is that everything for you, or did you have anything else you wanted to say as a wrap up?
I would say, I think, as you mentioned before the podcast, I think we should touch on the Hall of Fame real quick.
I want to do that.
For those who don't know, first off, today was the day for the induction for the Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, nobody new will be going into the Hall of Fame from the 21-21 class, as nobody reached the 75% mark. Curt Schilling was the closest with 71%. He missed it by just 16 votes. And then
it was actually that close. I didn't see the vote.
It was only 16 votes, so he came really close and shy of it. So obviously the majority had him in. Just a couple other quick notes on it I thought were interesting. It's the first time since 2013 not one player got 75%. It's the first time since 1960 that not one player is being inducted into the Hall of Fame because of the Veterans Committee not voting on it because of COVID. Why they couldn't do it over Zoom or mail like they did for this ballot, I don't know. But because they usually do it at the winter meetings, but that's why it didn't happen that way. But so that was odd to me that when I heard that. And then the final thing, I don't know if you heard this. Obviously, the debate is, should the steroid guys get in? Should Curt Schilling get in with his off the field issues? Now Omar Vizquel is another guy. Should he get in with his off the field issues? There were 14 blank ballots, which set an MLB Hall of Fame record as well. Previous was 12, but 14 now, due to they wanted to try to make sure steroid guys didn't get in, and the off the field issues guys didn't get in. And the words I heard on MLB Network, quote, I forget who said it, but he said they're basically protesting that these guys don't get into the Hall of Fame. So it's a tough look. And was I surprised nobody got in? I was honestly not surprised nobody got in. That's the way and direction I thought it was going to go. Is it a shame? Absolutely. It's always sad when I think disappointing when nobody gets in. But again, I was not surprised, and I don't fully disagree with it, the way it was handled. And that's where I stand on it, at least. Yeah.
For me, I think a guy we left out when we were opening the podcast that I also would vote in is Todd Helton. I forgot to mention him. I don't agree with the whole Coors effect thing. That dude was one of the best hitters during the time. Maybe there is an effect that you can hit easier at Coors Field. You still don't hit that damn good. You have to be good to hit that good. It's not just because you're playing in Coors Field. So
Yeah.
I would vote him in. A guy that I'm surprised didn't get, since he was kind of liked from what I understood in his career, didn't get a little bit more. I don't know if he even got enough to stay on the ballot, was Ramirez. Aramis Ramirez,
He is off the ballot.
someone that people disliked. So I was more thinking someone that had decent numbers, was actually liked, might at least stay. I don't think he's ever going to get in, but might at least stay on the ballot like other guys did, like Bobby did last year, with exactly making the percentage you need to stay on the ballot. So that's more what I was thinking along the lines with him. That's one of the surprise things for me. But yeah, I wasn't too shocked that nobody got in. I feel like it definitely comes down to where your stance is, where some guys vote for the people now, especially I think the documentaries that have come out since have probably changed some writers' views on the whole steroid shadow over people, and then other people kept their same opinion. So it depends on if your views got changed over time or if your views stay the same. And obviously for those 16 people, it seems like their views stay the same. And for people that voted, for guys that did them, it seems like their views kind of might have changed over time. So I still think, though, you can't submit a blank ballot, because even if you want to protest, there's people on here that have had no issues off the field, that have had no issues whatsoever, and you could still vote them in. And Jeff Kent is not necessarily that person. The one guy submitted a singular ballot with Jeff Kent, and I love Jeff Kent. I think he should be in. He was, other than Chase Utley, he's one of my favorite all-time second basemen. But he shouldn't be the only guy you submit on your damn ballot. Like that. If you're gonna do that, if you're gonna submit one guy, actually, I don't think there is one guy I would put as a singular guy in this Hall of Fame. Other guys you could be like, yeah, I'll put Jeter. I'll do like one and make it that dude. But this one, there's not even one guy I would hone in and say I'm just going to vote for one. But that's why whoever did that, I forget what Boston writer it was, but he only voted for Jeff Kent. That surprised me because he's not obvious. Usually if you just do one guy, it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't understand why you wouldn't at least submit some people, because you get up to, for those who don't know, you get up to 10 votes. You can vote up to 10 players. So you could have just voted for, if you really wanted to, 10 guys not named Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, etc.
Put Burley on your ballot or something.
You could have just
like
picked,
that.
yeah, you didn't have to, like, that's why I was surprised by what was going on there. I didn't really fully understand the blank ballot.
Or Hudson, I guess.
So, yeah, very interesting to see there. But yeah, very interesting note there. But I just thought we'd do a quick touch on that, obviously, because that was some pretty big news today in baseball. And
yeah. Now, who would you vote for? Just so we can give people, if we had a vote, who would be your 10, 7, 6, 5, whatever it is, guys?
Yeah, real quick, since you mentioned guys that didn't make it, before I answer that, Shane Victorino, unfortunately, obviously, being a former Philly, that's why I'm bringing him up, but he did not receive one vote, so he will be removed from the ballot next season.
Yeah, I remember him just saying it was an honor, I think, when it came out to even be on the ballot, let alone, yeah.
But for me personally, I'd vote for Billy Wagner. I thought deserved it. Todd Helton, Scott Rolen, I'd put on there. And listen, he got 8% of votes. He's on the rise. I would have picked Bobby Abreu. He's made some history in the league. I know that's probably one of the most surprising ones for some people listening, but he's one of the only few guys that have certain the amount of stolen bases he has with home runs and all that. So I think he's got a good honor in that sense. So those were my key six there. Again, Billy Wagner, Bobby Abreu, Scott Rolen, Todd Helton. I think I'm missing someone I actually written down earlier. I'm blanking on who it was.
You said Ken earlier.
Oh yeah, Jeff Kent. I think that was the six. Someone I was doing a show earlier and I kind of forgot to mention him. I think if I could go back there and change it, I think I might add Andrew Jones to that list as well. But I didn't say him earlier in an earlier show. I did. So I think I would go back and add Andrew Jones to that for seventh. But I'm one of those guys that I think I would leave off some of those steroid users.
Yeah, well, for me, I have to add Andrew Jones. You can't win 10 straight Golden Gloves and be an average 25 home run guy without making the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. That's just the way I would look at that. I don't care if you sucked for the rest of your career other than those 10 years. I would honestly vote you in for you could have played 20 years and sucked the last 10. Just for those 10 years, you would still potentially be a Hall of Famer. That's the one guy I would vote for. Kent, obviously, since I've talked about how much I like Jeff Kent, that was just a blatantly obvious one for me. Scott Rowland would be another one. Bobby. I still disagree with Jose and don't think Chef has been proven, so I'm going to throw Chef in there until I know otherwise. Billy, and I think I'm missing somebody that I had in my head. Oh, I said Mark Burley earlier. I've always liked Mark Burley, so whatever, I'll throw him a loop. He can get a Hall of Fame vote. Congratulations, Marky. And then I've always liked Tim Hudson, so I'll give you a Hall of Fame vote. Congratulations, Timmy. So there we go. Those would be my. If I decided to say I'm just going by numbers, I'm getting rid of the steroid thing, then I would obviously have 10 people because the rest would be Clemens, Bonds, and I think it would be 10 already. But if not, Ramirez, I guess. And then that would make 10 people. But that would be what would get me to 10. I would have to decide to vote for those three guys. And that would probably a decision. That would probably be like at the last second decision where
last second buzzer beater.
Yeah, it's like I want to do whatever. Screw it. There you go. Congratulations, Barry, or whatever. Like, but Bonds is the tricky one for me though, because I think he would have got in regardless. That's why that one's so difficult for me when I look at it. Even if I think of the whole steroid thing, where Clemens is more debatable, I always compare Clemens to Frosted Flakes. He was good, and then he was great once he took steroids. So,
I was not ready for that. That was good.
So that's the way I look at Roger, where Bonds was great and then just one of the best sluggers of all time after he took steroids. That's why there's a little. He was basically Rollins with 25 home run potential before he took steroids, and then all of a sudden he decided to compete with Mark McGwire and Sosa, who didn't even just take steroids, corked his freaking bat, which in my opinion is worse because all you have to do is have hand-eye coordination if you cork your bat, where at least with steroids you still have to work out. That's where Sosa, I feel like, is even easier when you cork your bat. And I remember his excuse was he did a commercial or something, and I'm like, so you did a commercial with every single one of the bats you own? Like, yeah, like that would be. I could see if you have a cork in one bat and don't notice, but not every single bat you own. But anyway, I think we pretty much wrapped it up as we went a little bit long with the Hall of Fame stuff. But yeah, it's sad to see Victorino fall off. I'm pretty sure a guy like Swish, I think, fell off too, who was just loved by everybody that watched baseball, Nick Swisher. So I think he fell off as well. But those would be the guys I would vote for. I'm not sure if AJ fell off. Did AJ fall off or did AJ stay on?
AJ Burnett?
Yeah.
He fell off, I believe. I didn't see anything from him. I earlier I would say it was. I don't remember how many votes, but yeah, he definitely did not make it. I don't think. Tim Hudson barely survived with 5.2%. So he just survived.
Oh, so you only need 5. Okay, I was thinking you need 5.5. My bad.
Yeah, you just need 5% to make it. Aramis Ramirez had 1%. LaTroy Hawkins had 0.5. Barry Zito had 0.2, and then everyone else had 0. So I don't even think AJ Burnett had a vote. But yeah, I think out of the guys you just mentioned, the most surprising to me was Sammy Sosa only getting 17%. Even though he was a user, I thought he would have got a little more than that.
It's the second thing. If you use and you cork your bat, you're just double stupid.
No, I know, but I just thought he would have got a couple more votes in that sense.
That's more what it is. It's like you're literally Dumb and Dumber put together.
Yeah.
When you do it that way, where everyone else is just dumb. So I think if you can get over them being dumb and making one mistake, you would vote for them. You have to get over Sosa making 2 blatantly stupid mistakes, and that's what I think. That's what it's going to be interesting when A-Rod gets in. I'm pretty sure he's on the ballot first next year, or if he gets in, excuse me. Because he had the first, and then he had double stupid or potentially triple stupid, but the other wasn't proven, with having it happen later in his career again. So that will be interesting to see what happens with him.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But I don't. It might not change necessarily next year. It might take a few years for the committee to start changing generations there for the voting before Steroid gets in.
Yeah, or the Veterans Committee, since they're the old players and everything, might look at it and go, "This guy torched me his entire career, so I'm still going to vote him into the Hall of Fame." That's when it's going to get interesting, especially for outside stuff aside. For people that do not know, Schilling pulled his name himself. So Curt Schilling is not going to be on the 10th year for the Baseball Writers Association. He decided to say he's going to pull his name himself and go to the Veterans Committee and going by the Veterans Committee, and that's the way he's the best way to do it. He also doesn't even think he's a Hall of Famer going by himself. He said at the end of his quote, "I don't think I'm a Hall of Famer, as I've often stated, but if former players think I am, then I'll accept that with honor." That was the end of. So, among many other bad things, at least one thing Curt Schilling is humble, I guess, when it comes to his baseball career. So,
With that, but
at least he has that going when it comes to that. But his exact quote was, "I will not participate in the final year of voting. I am requesting to be removed from the ballot. I defer to the Veterans Committee and men whose opinions actually matter and who are in a position to actually judge a player." Shots fired. I don't think I'm a Hall of Famer, as I've often stated, but if former players think I am, then I'll accept that with honor. So, in a backhanded way, he's basically saying to the writers, "You don't matter." That's literally. He said, "I'm going to go with opinions that actually matter." Well, what's that saying? It's saying to the writers, your opinions don't matter. So that's the one thing he's saying there. Obviously, I don't agree with that. With some guys, I do, like the 16 people that submitted nobody. But with guys like Ken Rosenthal and people I like, I definitely don't agree with that. If you submit nobody, though, then yeah, you shouldn't vote. Give up your voting rights. You don't deserve to vote if you submit nobody. But other than that, I think, yeah, I don't agree with what Curt said. But anyway, Andrew, you're still AJ_Santangelo, right, for Twitter?
correct.
No changes there. Okay. And I'm at JJ Boric 26. As always, to end this podcast, we're going to send it over to the great Irish rock band, the Celtic rock band. There we go. The Jackdaws. I couldn't speak. As they play us out for the show. This has been this edition of Chasing the Pennant podcast. I'm your host, Joe Boric, joined by the great Andrew Santangelo. JT is back, baby. Biscuit, he's back. See you later, folks.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.